Bien, el siguiente ponente es Robert Stroud. Creo que Robert Stroud no necesita mucha presentación. Él se plasmó como evangelista de gobierno y gestión del servicio. Y le gusta presentarse como veterano del sector. Hay muy pocas personas que quieran poner la palabra veterano en su currículum y Robert Stroud es una de ellas. Entonces, bueno, yo estoy satisfecho con esto. La verdad es que creo que es un título que me gusta y ha estado muchos años, yo le recuerdo prácticamente toda la vida, dando ponencias no solo en itSMF España, sino en muchos congresos itSMF, que está también en ISACA, ha participado en COVID, etcétera. Y bueno, hoy nos dará una ponencia que, bueno, pues a mí a priori me parece interesante. Robert, when you want, you start your speech.
Floor up here at the moment with all these broken plates everywhere, but I'll look at that. You know, I worked in Australia for a long time, you can probably tell by the accent, and I worked in a place called Melbourne, Victoria. And not far from the data centre that I worked in was the train yards where the trains were left. And interestingly enough, this is a colleague of mine's front of his house. And when something like this happens once, you might think it's an incident or a problem or just a strange event. But when it happens twice, you're a bit worried it's suddenly becoming business as usual, aren't you? And it's one of the things that we've been doing in IT. We've got used to fixing things, being reactive, delivering value, just consistently going around and around and around and fixing things. And we've made circumstances that shouldn't happen business as usual. You know, I catch a lot of planes, and as I catch planes, you know, you get on the plane and you read the little safety card. They have the demonstration, right? I've heard that demonstration so many times I can probably give it to you now. No smoking is allowed. You know, in the case of an emergency or a landing on water, your seat may be used as a cushion. Well, I can tell you right now, if that plane lands in the water, I'm pretty sure that I won't be using the seat as a cushion because it'll probably over the landing and there'll be nowhere to swim to. But I was booked to go on this plane. Went from New York LaGuardia to not far. And as it took off and the birds went in the engine, suddenly all that training and knowledge of learning what to do in the case of an emergency became very useful to that crew and also the passengers. Unfortunately, I didn't catch the plane. I wish I did, because then I'd have excellent stories to tell you about, and you can imagine all the photos I would have taken on my little iPhone or my camera. But the world's evolving, it's changing, things are different. In the previous discussion with our friend, the Chief Innovation Officer, that's something I've been doing a lot of talking about and thinking about lately. But if you go back to just 100 years ago in manufacturing, one of the large manufacturers in the world was actually better at producing electricity than producing cars. They actually developed their own and powered their own electricity and made electricity for them to run with. And if you think about it, what happened after a while is electricity manufacturers became very apparent, and they made electricity cheaper, faster, better. And that manufacturer had to decide, did they want to continue to invest in technology for generating electricity, or did they want to transition to do what they do best, and that's make cars? If you think about it for a moment, as you would be making cars or automobiles back then, over time the demand grew and grew and grew. And this is a graph that's what's happening at the moment in terms of the industry. So if you look here for a moment, we were growing at quite a nice rate, credit recession came, and now here's our budgets and resources. What's happening though is the business is continuing to grow. Innovation, change, demand for change is just continuing to ramp up. And fundamentally that's because business and IT are now linked together. You cannot deliver business without IT. It's very difficult. Even the taxi I caught this morning had a meter in it. That meter was linked automatically to a credit card authorization system, although I paid cash. But anyway, it doesn't matter, it was all linked together. The new car that we bought has 7 chips in it, in different areas to control. and if the chip to the driver's seat fails, you have no way of manually overriding it. So what's happening is we've got this growing requirement, this growing demand on IT. It's growing, it's all the time increasing, change is increasing, and at the same time we don't have any more money, any more capability. We're being told that we just need to consistently deliver. CIO of a large financial organisation told me he describes himself as his people now as the cobbler's children. They're so busy delivering innovation and business value, there's no longer any time to focus on internal systems for efficiency. This is clearly going to cause us some pain over time. Then we've got a culture issue. By the way, if you've got a mobile phone or a hand phone or a cell phone and you've got Twitter or BlackBerry or anything you want to use, go ahead. In my sessions, you can email away, I don't mind. Because you're being part of the new digital native generation. Digital natives, currently described as 18 to 34s, are coming out of college and they've been technically literate all their life. They text without thinking, they do Twitter without thinking, they'll be on MySpace without care for their privacy. They are a changed generation in the way they use technology. And I believe we need to allow for that and understand that, and we are seeing a growing of their personal life and their work life into one. We try to control them by telling them you can't blog, you can't have access, you can't do this, you can't do that. They go out and buy a smartphone and they can be at work and they're blogging and twittering away all they want. You need to embrace this, you need to understand that this is coming. Whether you like it or not, you're going to have to deliver or work with these people going forward. The way we market is changing. Ford, this is a wonderful example of Ford and the changed marketing that they're using. Ford now spend 25% of their marketing budget online. In the Twitter sphere, in the blogger sphere, in the Facebook sphere. They're there, they're moving there. You know that they were the only car company in North America that didn't have to go for a handout. But they also dramatically grew their market share of their world car by just targeted marketing in that environment. And this is an example of what we've got to go, or where we're going. More and more marketing is going to be done through this convergence of technology and the many digital forms. So, for example, one of the things you're going to clearly see going forward is marketing budgets are going to be dynamic, they're going to move quickly, they're going to be in Facebook and things that we're not used to. That's going to lead to demands that we weren't expecting, and we're going to have to deliver. So whether it's the Chief Information Officer, the Chief Innovation Officer, or some other derivation of the CIO, the role is fundamentally changing. What we have to do in IT is transitioning from what we were used to where we're going to tomorrow. Technology is going to be faster, and we're going to have to be measured on things like transparency and cost and business value. Those things are very simple to say and hard to do. You know, things like elasticity and scalability, demand goes up and down. You've got a requirement for some more capacity. You've got to deliver it. The business don't want to see a business case for more CPUs or more virtual machines. They want to see you deliver it and deliver it then. You've got the concepts of financial transparency. Are you measuring kilobytes, terabytes, petabytes, and any sort of byte you can take? The reality of it is the business wants to see the cost per transaction. They want to see how much it costs to deliver that transaction so they can put that into the overall business case to work out business value, to determine whether something's successful or not. Speed to market. No longer can you do a 2-year IT project. You have 6 months, that's it. You had better deliver the system or the technology or the application or the service in 6 months. If you've got an iPhone, you go to the apps. And recently I was watching a movie and in the movie somebody came on and said, hey, there's an app for that. An app is a described piece of functionality that's available. Once again, how are you going to handle that within your IT organisation? How are you going to drive it? How are you going to ensure that you can roll this out as a value proposition? And at the same time, you're going to be expected to be 24/7 by 365, whether you like it or not. So So the role is changing, and if you look about it in the past, CIO sits in here somewhere, he or she has all these experts, network expert, management expert, technical experts. We're all there delivering systems and services, we're all there being very good in our silos. Well, the customer is absolutely changing. It's always been there, but now it's even more fundamentally important than ever. Instead of you delivering to a user, a person in a branch or a manufacturing line, you're delivering to the end user. Perfect example of that. Banking. I started in banking a long time ago. And when I was in banking, every transaction was done through a teller, a human. Today, 90% of business transactions in banking are done electronically. So the IT consumer is not somebody in the business. It's actually the end user. It's a fundamental change. They require speed to market, they require that your service levels are perfect, they require that your transaction is of high quality. And at the back end, IT is now pulling together the various components to deliver that service. So where are we going and how are we getting there? And this is a graphic that kind of shows the transition in IT. I remember mainframes very well. It was all controlled, all constructed, easily done. If you go forward from there, we're heavily into virtualization. A friend of mine in a large analyst company told me that your Intel CPU environment is highly virtualized today. It could be as high as 80%. As you go and you do your virtualization and you just virtualize everything you can, you end up with this wonderful concept called virtual sprawl, where you've got more virtual environments than you had before. I'm aware of one US government organisation that virtualised everything, built a new data centre, put beautiful racks in, beautiful space, lots of cool stuff, and then before they knew where they were going, they had 10 times the number of CPUs they had before in virtual environments. Suddenly becomes a management headache. So we went to the next step. Let's automate everything. Let's just automate the process, make it easier. So I'll automate whatever process you like. And without automating the process and streamlining and structuring it or optimizing it, all you're doing is automating where it was today. From there, once you've automated it, you're going to apply, you're going to look at those processes and you're going to rationalize them, you're going to get rid of things you don't need. And then from there, you end up with this thing called internal cloud. So we've gone and we've changed our language. We're now talking about an internal cloud. Everything's a cloud, isn't that wonderful? And we're there in a situation where we now can deliver this capacity or availability or whatever it is, and we change the language that we talk to the business. So here's a kind of a picture that you're going through, and if you're not going through one of these cycles, I would be surprised. But the first concept here, and you can see it's a closed loop cycle that just goes around and around. That's one of the things we've learned with ITIL. As soon as you've gone and you've implemented some processes, you've worked out the integration, you've got to look at the continual service improvement. You've got to go back and improve and rationalise. So the first step here is consolidating. If you start at the left, from there you go and you optimise. You go there for automation and then transformation. And really what we're doing now is we're transforming IT. IT, as we know it, is transforming from us doing it all to us being the team that put together the components that deliver technology in our environment or business service. And it's a fundamental transition that's happening, and it's happening before your eyes. Cloud, virtualization, outsourcing, insourcing. All these things are really about us fundamentally transitioning what we're doing. So you end up with a maturity curve, and here's one I just made up. And we talked about it before in terms of cost. CIO of a large financial organisation worldwide. He has no more IT budget. He has significant more work to do. Interesting what he is doing. He is moving people from operational and back-end systems into supporting the business and delivering the business services they want, the capability they want, the change they want. And in so doing, what he's having to do is transform a lot of capital expenditure to operational expenditure. We have to transition the way we pay for things. And if you think about it, that's one way. When you've got a limited number of dollars and you can spend and you don't have money for huge capital investments, then you've got to look at operational expenses. You've got to look at not cutting them, but actually transitioning CapEx dollars to OpEx dollars. Many of you are doing this already. You're using cloud computing, you're using outsourcing on the pay by the drink, you're consuming various services. This is one way of balancing the budget. The other thing is, whether you like it or not, your business is doing it on you today. Recently speaking to a large manufacturing organisation, they had a policy of no cloud. So they went and did an audit, and they found out that they own 2,500 Salesforce.com licenses, which are a SaaS application, a CRM. IT knew nothing about it. They had no concept it was happening, but the business were expensing it every month on their credit card and putting it through their P&Ls. As you go from there, we're going to have to really look at things like service levels. And I'm going to talk more about service levels in a minute. But service levels are a fundamental and critical component to what we deliver. And we can no longer measure things in terms of 99.999. But the most important thing you need to do is be agile. Be able to move things around. Now, process we all understand, we're all good at, and here's a server provisioning process. Doesn't matter if this is yours or someone else's, right? Here's the 12 steps we go through, or 15 steps, or 400 steps to provision a server. A common complaint I hear all the time is server provisioning takes too long. Even when I have virtualization, it might still take 2 or 3 months to provision a server. You know, I recently read about a large newspaper and they had this problem. They had all these archives of old newspapers. These archives are on microfiche. They asked IT to provide capability to take those archives to images that were online so they could sell them. IT quoted them 6 to 9 months and $2 million for the project. Sounds reasonable. 6 to 9 months, $2 million, 10 technicians, no problem. A team of business analysts got together over the weekend from the business, not IT, went to the Amazon EC2 cloud, bought some rack space, and digitised all those images over a weekend. And on Monday gave IT the library of images to link to on the website. It cost a couple $1,000 on a credit card. Time frame, over the weekend. The digital native generation that's coming into the workforce today know they can do it. I have a 25-year-old daughter-in-law. She's recently doing she's doing a PhD. She's doing an assignment at school. There's some technical capability she needs. She's never done IT, never done computer science, writes a short piece of code, and is good to go. Therefore, things like using these things like consolidation, labs on demand, virtualized environments, we're all looking at doing and delivering. And there's another case study here that you can see where you can actually do a lab on demand, or see how we did a beta on demand recently. That beta on demand, instead of going out and physically installing, we went to the Amazon EC2 cloud, put images up there, had people test the beta, had people deliver the capabilities, and we cut a beta cycle from 3 months into about 3 weeks. Because that environment was immediately available. We also use it internally, and many organisations do, for things like testing. You've always got that problem. I don't know about you, but I do a lot of change management implementations, and I'd say to the developers, you have to test before you go to production. They'd say it takes too long to build the test environment. So if you've got a virtualized environment with desensitized data ready to go, and all they've got to do is press a button in a service catalog, click, done, environment's there, test. They make a mistake, blow it away, do another click. This is adding value back into the business, adding process, and leveraging process to deliver value. Many of you have heard a lot about cloud. Cloud this, cloud that. It was cloudy yesterday with some rain here. But I always start when I'm talking about cloud computing with a couple of definitions. And these are the NIST, National Institute of Science and Technology definitions here. And we'll go through them a bit more in a moment. But cloud computing, I believe, its fundamental opportunity is to change the way we talk to the business. Instead of talking about data and asset ownership, we can talk about the business they need or the components they need to consume, what level of consumption, and we can use it as a way to transform the cost back. The big talk at the moment is public cloud. Now, if you've got a Gmail account or a Yahoo Mail account or whatever, you're using the public cloud. It's available, it's there, you go, you can get it for free, you can consume it, you can get it anywhere, it's ubiquitous, easy to use. Software as a service, Salesforce.com is a very, very good example of software as a service. A design set of functionality, you go and you pay for what you use. Apps on your iPhone are another example of software as a service. There are many of them. Fundamentally, they're being marketed direct to the business consumer. They do a specifically designed piece of capability. They deliver it well, and you pay for what you use. Platform as a service. Some examples of that, the Microsoft Azure platform, the Google Other platform, there are lots of them out there. Once again, you go there, if you need some platform capabilities, you go, you pay some money, you put your infrastructure up there, you get an IP address, you point to it and use it. Then infrastructure as a service, this is one that many of us are playing with in our development environments today. These give us a capability to deliver additional infrastructure. Now, in terms of how you use that, you can see here, I believe that the real use of cloud, as I said before, is a metaphor to change the way we talk to the business. It's a culture changer. So I've actually seen a lot of organisations do what I call private cloud. In doing private cloud, what you'll go and do is you may or may not have that sourced externally, but you'll go and treat your IT environment as a cloud. As an environment of technology where you're the experts, you have the solutions, you put the relevant assets and components together, and then you deliver capability back to the consumer, whoever they are. US government is heavily into cloud. You go and read usgov.org and look at that, and you can see the US government CEO says, we are going to the cloud. Well, very good, enjoy that. But in the cloud, what they really have done is internal IT departments have gone and changed the way they talk to the business. They are doing cloud-like delivery capabilities at the back end, but they're changing the way they communicate with the business. They're using it saying, what applications or services do you need to consume? What does it look like? And how are we going to do it? This is an excellent opportunity for us as service management professionals as well, because cloud requires the discussion of parameters, objectives, capabilities, and things like that. So, if you talk about this cloud office, there's a lot of opportunity, but, you know, there's this negative side. 42% of people surveyed in April of this year said that they would never do cloud computing because of the security risks. Well, that's exciting. In that same survey, 10% of enterprises said that they would absolutely put fundamentally business-critical applications to the cloud. Business-critical applications to the cloud. Now, we didn't ask them, was that private or public? But as you go and you look at that, you can do secure cloud computing as well. But I believe as service management professionals, this is where we will shine. This is where we have the excellent opportunity. We actually need, before you go to the cloud, before you do virtualization, before you do outsourcing, before you do anything, you need to get your processes in order. You need to get it structured and organised. As we look here, one of the things you can see is we've got three fundamental things we need to care about. The first is quality. We can't just say we deliver 99.999% availability anymore. We have to understand what the consumer usage is, because remember, the boundaries are now our customer, not our data center. It's okay, you know, and one good example, if you go to a cash machine to get some money out, get €100 out later on today, that cash machine is open for business. It actually has no cash, but can do all the other transactions that machine can do. IT will probably report that as 100% available. Yet I, as the customer, am not happy at all. So there's a real definition there that we need to understand. You go to a restaurant, and there's a restaurant near my house, and when you go in, it says on the counter, average serving time, 42 seconds. Okay, 42 seconds. I'll start my stopwatch now. Click, click, click. So you're in the back, you're the IT department in the back, working to deliver this hamburger. You're missing your service level. What do? You grab the wrapper that this hamburger is put on, you just throw the ingredients on the wrapper, tie it together, and give it to the customer. It has no quality, it doesn't have the right order or structure. You have met the service level, but you haven't delivered quality. And too often in IT we measure service levels, not quality of service or true service level in the business eyes. Security is going to be a bigger issue going forward. We are going to have to be concerned about the way we deliver things, the way we give security. Now, we won't be able to do it the old way, which is just a user, okay, we'll define you somewhere in a table or an access level. We're actually going to have to start doing role-based security, more intelligent user security. We're going to have multiple services aggregated, so you're actually going to have to give security privileges out and rights of authentication. And in the cloud, one of the things we're working on now is not just security as in a single authentication with a username and password. We're actually building security personas so that we can see your normal behaviour, we see what you usually do, we understand where you deviate from that normal pattern of behaviour. We will challenge you, not with an access denied, but with a, hey, maybe you're not quite where we think you are. A really good example of that is my bank today. I logged onto my internet banking site, and it saw that I was in Madrid. And it basically came back with a challenge question, something only I would know. And it asked that challenge question to validate that it really was me and not some unethical person trying to access my account in Madrid. The governance and compliance, whether you like it or not, governance is going to increase. You're going to have to govern your systems internally better. You're going to have to ensure that you're integrating those various metrics and controls. You're automatically measuring them and articulating them, and the business is going to want to see them. So as we move forward from there, I just want to give you a couple of little fundamental building blocks. And these are questions you can use. When you go back and look at this presentation, here are some questions you can use in your own organisation to understand how to measure and deliver and what you're doing today. Whether you're delivering insourcing, outsourcing, cloud, virtualisation, it doesn't matter. First thing is the definition of services. Now, I don't mean a technology stack like a server, I mean a business-based service. When I was in banking, I asked the question of my retail banking people, I would say, how do you describe the service we give? And they say, we call it Hogan. If I talked to them in terms of Hogan, they absolutely knew what I was talking about, and they could say, Hogan is too slow doing this or too fast doing that. Hogan was a conglomeration of an application, network, bandwidth, back-end, 3 partners. I could talk to them about mortgage processing. They would say, well, we've got a problem with mortgage processing, and then when we go out to the third-party credit bureau, the result doesn't come back consistently or quickly enough. Fine. Once again, you understand that there's that problem, that's a third-party supplier. We can integrate that hybrid service together. So as we go and we talk about that, we can understand those services. Cost of service. One of the things about new services is often the business will actually price a new project or that's going, and they'll price it for 1 year, plus implementation plus 1 year. One of the fundamentals we need to do is price all our new projects over the full life cycle of that project. The usual period is 3 years now. Even if you get your business cases to be 1 year, go from 1 year operational cost to 3 years, then you can truly add value. So as we move forward, you've really got to have a basic principle required approach to service management. Yes, you can use ITIL, you can use CODA, you can use ISO 20000, you can use the Carnegie Mellon methodology for outsourced services. It doesn't really matter. They're all valid. But you've really got to start focusing on some different perspectives. Instead of just doing incident management and service desk, they're important, don't get me wrong. Why don't we start focusing on the front end, understanding what the planning looks like and what the demand looks like. I believe we need to start getting involved way up front, especially with cloud-based services at the back end. Because if we know what the business looks like, where it's going, what the strategic plan is, what the operational plan is, We can then convert that into technology requirements and work out where we source those components. And fundamentally, that's our challenge going forward. To do that, focus on things like automated service requests, knowledge management, collaboration. Look at the things like Bing or Google or any of those search engines on the web today and how the digital natives entering your workplace use that to solve problems. Once again, my 25-year-old son's a perfect example of building a car in the garage for my grandson, and there's a problem with the parts or the instructions. So I said to him, let's go call the helpline. His answer was no, let's go online and do a search on some fundamental key points. We got a response back in seconds to our problem, and it said go to the store, buy these 3 bolts, they're probably missing from the pack, you can use them instead of what's supplied, and you're good to go. I call it wisdom of the crowd, wisdom of the cloud, some people call it, but that wisdom needs to be brought into your organisation and leverage as knowledge management. Knowledge is important and key, and the way we use it today is different. So management of demand is fundamental, you've got to understand it. Now demand comes in 3 forms, strategical, tactical and operational. Now you're pretty good at managing strategic demand today. You've all got project or portfolio management systems, you're all Prince 2 or PMBOK or some other form, well done. Operational demand we've got a handle on today, we've got basic requests, we automate those processes. It's all that demand in the middle. We need to start capturing it, we need to start understanding it, we need to start modelling it. Because going forward, that's the demand that's going to kill you. And how are you going to know what to do? Whether you like it or not, if you don't have the ITIL supplier management process in place or vendor management or some form to manage your suppliers, you better get one quick. Going forward, managing your suppliers is going to be the key aspect or one of the key aspects of your role because you're going to be using so many of them and they're going to be diversified. You're going to need how to measure them, manage them, monitor them. And when you do have a major system outage, you're going to have to know who's got the ball, as we say. Who's got the baton? Or when we were juggling before, who's juggling the plates? So I think that's another fundamental shift we need to do, and we need to do it quickly. So in reality, how do you use all this together for value? So in terms of value, this is one implementation of all these framework standards and technologies together. So I want to share this with you for a moment. At the top, we've got the corporate governance of IT, ISO 38500. We've got under that, we've got our security layer, 27001, using 27002 as code of practice to ensure we understand how to construct our security. We have an enterprise architecture in place. So an enterprise architecture defines how we're going to design our systems and develop and how you can get things to production quickly. We have an applications development methodology, you all have them. And then for operations management, we have ITIL. To validate that we deliver what we say we're delivering in operational space, of course 20,000, we have our government laws and compliance. And then around that we use COVID controls. Sounds complex, actually it's quite simple when you put the basic fundamentals in place and manage. What's the value of this? Well first, your organisation is certifiable. You can go and say we are world practice in terms of corporate governance of IT. We have great security in place according to the world standard. Our operations management is exactly as adhered to. Down there though, what the interesting concept of doing this is because your controls are defined in every level and they're automated and instrumented, you can actually push risk-based decisions down to a departmental or user level. And then their decision making is defensible because all the controls and the audit requirements are actually collected. Really interesting concepts. You're actually giving people data. So you have a predictable risk model, you know where the decisions are, you know where the holes are. The interesting concept here in implementing this is we talk about operational excellence. Operational excellence is defined in most organisations as an enterprise you will spend between 4 and 6% of your revenue in IT. If you're above that, you're outside the bounds of operational excellence. If you're under it, you're outside the bounds of operational excellence because you're too cheap. But if you're in the middle, you're about right. Operational excellence is about managing the organisation in a cost-effective manner, but it's more than that. It's about being defensible, having process in place. Another interesting concept of this model. They go through and they understand what really is a change, what really needs to go through the rigors of change. They understand what to request, and they understand what's the project. So in closing, just a few words to summarise. Technology, today we're talking about virtualisation and cloud. Next year I'll be here talking about something else, I'm sure. Absolutely, technology is moving at a fundamentally rapid pace, faster than I've ever seen. One thing I can tell you for sure, next year we'll all be sitting here and the mechanisms that we access technology and services will probably be different to this year. The iPad was the big thing of the last 12 months. I don't know what it'll be today. Right now I'm in a pilot of convergence of satellite TV and internet connectivity and also using my virtual desktop at the same time. But the way we access information, which is really what we're about, is changing. Every device in your house could potentially be internet web. I love to tell the story. If you come to my house, my heating and cooling system is hooked up on the internet. I'm the only person with the user ID and password. And when I'm travelling, I manage the temperature of my house, so I'm beautiful and warm wherever I am, and I really don't care whether they are. But as you manage that temperature, we're going to be able to do that. You're going to be able to manage anything, anywhere, anytime. You're going to be doing it through multiple devices. You're going to be doing it in different ways. If you haven't married your requirements together, your governance requirements, your legislative requirements, your compliance requirements, and also your practices together, so you have just enough process, you're going to end up in a horrible mess. You need to collaborate and understand that relationships with third parties are going to be a norm, not a change. If you're using cloud computing, that's great. If you're not, it will. But the other aspect is, if you don't have clear and effective service management in place, we will go through that phase we went through years ago, where we'll outsource your mess for less, is the term. If you take a mess and outsource it, it probably is a mess when it's outsourced. You must bring it under control, is the bad word. You must have it managed. Managed to the point where you understand it, you know what it is. ITIL gives us fundamental base principles, ITIL processes. You can look at those, leverage them and use them. You don't like ITIL? Pick your own framework. I really don't care. Pick your own standard. It doesn't matter. But ultimately, the head of the stack is the business, and we need to understand what the business wants, the business consumes, and how it is. My final story. This flight took off from Vancouver, Canada, going to Toronto, Canada. Got halfway across Canada, and suddenly the pilot got the low fuel warning light. An incident. As the pilot looked at the incident, they validated if the incident was not a false alarm. The incident very quickly escalated to a problem as the engines cut off with no fuel. Because of effective knowledge management and effective training, the pilot knew how to coast that jet to a landing field if he could find one. He immediately got on the radio and found a disused World War II Army base and successfully landed the plane. You might say, hey Rob, look, the front wheel's down. That's another problem. Well, it turns out, as we work for continuity management, that the planes are designed so that when you land with no fuel, there's no way to reverse thrust. So what do? You drop the front wheel so it lands and skids on its nose and effectively creates friction and brakes. We got to the end of the runway, slides deployed, everybody had an extra course on how to use the emergency slide and their seat for water, for being in the water. They landed, they went down the slide. The only injury was one broken ankle because someone forgot to take off their high heels. One injury. Is this a disaster or a success? It's a success. But the reality of it is, this is standards working together. Compliance, processes, and also frameworks. Why did it happen? Root cause analysis was done. And you know, if you measure fuel in pounds instead of kilograms, you get halfway across Canada and you suddenly run out of fuel and you have to land. True story here. Standards are here to help us. Communication is here to help us, and you get it all together and it all works. It's all about the customer. It's all about customer experiences. And as we go forward, IT will be managing the customer as well as IT. So with that said, thank you very much, and I hope you have a really great day.